Welcome to the Board of Health meeting of September 19th, 2022. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording this meeting, please notify the chairman. Pursuant to Governor Baker's July 16th, 2022 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of the March 12, 2020 and July 15th, 2022 orders suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, chapter 30A, section 20, until March 31st, 2023, this meeting of the Chatham Board of Health is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 508-945-4410, and the conference ID is 888-419-00#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. And now I'll turn the meeting over to Chairman Hanson.
Thank you. It shall be the policy of this board to conduct its meetings under the open meetings law so as to encourage public participation whenever time permits and as part of agenda item discussions. Okay, so we have 6 items on the agenda, but first let's establish that we have a quorum, which we do. But as I call your name, will you just say present? Ed Sheehan?
Yes.
Ron Broman?
Here.
John Beckley?
Here.
Carol Boyce?
Here.
And I'm here, Noble Hanson. The first hearing is request for an extension from sewer connection order for 410 Main Street. And I think Attorney Litchfield is here to represent the buyer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Yes, Bill Litchfield here on behalf of the prospective buyer of 410 Main Street, a structure about which we've learned a great deal in recent weeks and something of a curious history. My client proposes to purchase the property on October 14th. Based on a review of the files and with assistance from both Judy and Lucas, who both of whom were most helpful, we've determined that it had at one point been a 4-bedroom house, although much of it was converted to retail use, and a 4-bedroom septic system, Title V system, was apparently installed in 2003. We subsequently learned, however, that the current owner was ordered to connect the town sewer not last year or the year before, but back in 2016. We are now seeking a somewhat technical waiver from 3.1 of the real estate transfer regulation, which provides that open inspection is required at the time of the sale. Given the order to connect, one with which my client will comply, and because the current building has no heating system and is uninhabitable or will soon become uninhabitable as closed weather comes along, an inspection would serve absolutely no purpose except to waste some time and some money, while it is the responsibility of the owner or seller to cause an inspection to be done per 3.4 of the regulation. Both sides of the transaction in which I'm involved feel it would be kind of a nullity. An inspection is, or should be, we hope, unnecessary. So that's the first request, the technical one, or waiver of the pre-closing inspection. Beyond that, and whether you'd like me to return for this later or to speak about it now, I will speak about it up to you now, and what you do about it is up to you. But we already know that my client is going to be making some significant changes to the building, both as structurally and as to its use. So we're seeking some additional time to connect to the sewer line. I'd like to think that my client shouldn't be penalized for the failures over the last 6 years. He doesn't own it yet. So we're looking for some additional time. I can tell you that we've been in touch with both an engineer and an installer as to potential plans and time frames. On the other hand, if we equate this to a 90-day requirement which would apply to upgrading of a septic system, a failed septic system, That only gives us until January 14, and I would anticipate that the permitting, not with the super efficient Board of Health, but perhaps with some other boards, might take us beyond January 14th. So again, the building is not habitable, isn't heated, and with impending cold weather, it won't be. I would ask for an additional 90 days beyond the standard 90 days to April 14th, 2023, to develop plans for the building and its uses, and accordingly an extension of the 2016 and 2021 orders to connect. I can't guarantee that the installation will be accomplished by then, but if it hasn't been, we'll certainly come back to you for further discussions.
Yeah, so I think you can combine the two requests. And Judy has reviewed things, and she has recommended a 6-month extension. So will a 6-month extension fulfill what you just said about the timing?
6 months from the closing, if it happens on October 14th, would be perfectly acceptable, and we appreciate that.
Okay, and then we'll open up to the board. I had one question. Does this would be Judy, I guess, does this kind of variance go to the buyer so that if the deal falls through, the variance falls through? Or do we stipulate
think
that?
it
We would if I could, Mr. Chairman, we would stipulate that it only apply to my client and not to any other uses.
Yeah, I guess that's reasonable, yep.
Because obviously it's,
I mean, the owner of the property could ask for a variance, and then it could go with the property, but if it's your client that's asking for it, then yes, that's what it would be.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, I will advise Judy in writing, right now, my client may be taking title through an LLC or something, so I will provide that information to Judy.
Okay.
okay, and board have questions or comments about the request?
The existing Title V system. The existing Title V system, is it working okay now?
As far as I know, Judy has, a prior owner, or prior potential buyer had some discussions with Judy. I don't think they had it inspected because they planned to demolish the building. I'm not sure when it was last used as a residence. I think Judy has some pictures there. None of us would want to live there currently. So I honestly don't know if it is functioning or not. I have no reason to think that it is not functioning.
But there's no reason to think that if the buyers decided they wanted to move in while they were planning the future of the building, there's no way they're going to do that. Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Just so, I did go in the property when they first put it up for sale, and it is pretty much unlivable. It's been used as a retail shop.
Okay.
It's not really a livable, but there are 4, I counted bedrooms, and there were 4 bedrooms.
And there are bathrooms in there, I'm assuming.
And bathrooms, yeah.
Right.
The kitchen area, kind of.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the board? Okay, then, can I get a motion to grant the variance for 6 months given to the prospective buyer that Judy will
And to waive the
stipulate?
inspection.
And to waive the inspection. Ron?
I'll move the motion.
I'll second.
Carol seconds. Okay, public comment? All right, hearing none, we can take a vote. I think we could do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say no. Hearing none. That passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. We appreciate that.
Okay, and the second is also with Attorney Litchfield, request for waiver from real estate transfer regulation for 184 Barcliff Avenue. And Attorney Litchfield can present
Thank you,
that.
Mr. Chairman. Bill Litchfield once again, representing the prospective purchaser of 184 Barcliff, which coincidentally has a closing schedule for October 14th, but this is somewhat different circumstances, though. This house has a cesspool, or apparently cesspools, which is, of course, an automatic failure. Nonetheless, the real estate transfer regulation doesn't strictly allow for a transfer without inspection, and again, it would be a tight waste of time and money. We know it's an automatic failure if we had it inspected, but we would ask for relief from the requirement of inspection, which under 3.1 is required at the time of sale. Section 4.4 of the regulation allows for transfers without inspection in situations where demolition is contemplated, but here the house is fine, demolition is not contemplated. The parties have simply agreed the buyer will install the system post-closing, and we're seeking 90 days from closing to accomplish that goal, which is exactly what would be required in the event of a failed system. Parenthetically, I learned after filing this request that closing may be delayed, as often happens, but whenever it happens, we would seek to close without the inspection. I am, however, pleased to report some small additional facts that I think you'll find to be good. Good news. First, Moran Engineering has produced plans for a 4-bedroom Title V system, which have been sent out for bids. In addition, Bob Dubus has written to the current owners stating that the existing cesspools appear to be functioning just as they have for several decades without being a particular danger to public health. So we're seeking to close without an inspection and to have 90 days to install the system. I don't think we will need more time, but in the event that we do, we will come back to you. But that's the gist of our request, that the inspection requirement be waived, be treated as a failed system, which it is automatically, and that we have 90 days from the closing to install the new system.
Okay, Judy has reviewed the case, and she has recommended that the applicant be given a 6-month extension from the date of transfer. Are there questions from the board or comments?
Well,
Carol?
why 6 months if they're only asking for 90 days?
Just for practicality, I thought it may take them longer than 3 months to get it done,
And
knowing that.
it may. Thank
Yeah.
you. I certainly
Just
defer to
knowing
Judy's
that how backed
expertise.
up the contractors are, unless they're ready to go,
And they're
3
not.
months may be unreasonable.
Is it important to know if there's anything wrong with this cesspool other than Bob Dubus's just aside that it seems to be okay? I mean, if the cesspool is leaking, if there's, then you might order it to be pumped. Or,
Did he open it up and look, or did he just do a walkover?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I can read Bob Dubus's letter, which may be of some help to you. I don't know that it was filed with Judy. This notice is in place of a formal septic system Title V report for the sale of the above property, 184. As the property at 184 Barcliff Avenue is serviced by cesspools, it does not meet the criteria for Title V. We do believe the current system would work for a time with minimal usage of the home.
Okay.
he believes that because he looked at it?
Yes,
Oh.
he did go out.
But looked at it means what?
Usually what they do is they open them and make sure that they're structurally sound and not near full capacity. And
Okay.
they do leach out, and that's what they're made to do. So as long as they're not full to the top, then they know.
Right,
there's
so,
room.
so we're assuming he took the top off and looked and it's not full.
Yeah.
We don't know that.
There's no surface discharge.
Right,
which would be
but
the
we don't
worst
have,
sign
they don't
of
have that,
an
in that's not written anywhere. That's just sort of an assumption that he went out and he took the top off and looked at it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can assume it's
ask
been
him that?
working for decades, so it'll probably continue to work for another 6 months. I mean, we can add a condition that if it fails, they'll have to pump it until they're able to get it connected.
So what does this mean for the prospective buyer? Does that prospective buyer need to be advised that the system serving the home is weak, and there needs to be an effort to
Yeah.
minimize wastewater usage? I mean, people come in and they're gonna take, 30-minute
Right.
showers and
Yeah,
everything,
it's a
but
change of ownership, there could be a change in usage style, so they could
Yes.
create a situation if, a single little old lady had been living there and then a family of 4 moves in, could be a different situation, but.
So,
If
is
I
there-
could respond to something that might assuage some concerns. My client, like most buyers, like many buyers, is obtaining a mortgage loan. His lender is going to be holding in escrow the sum necessary to install the new septic system. He will have to front the money. He wants that money from his lender. So there is an impetus to get this done in short order. And he is very much aware of the situation.
Okay. And the buyer will be aware of the fact that they need to be responsible in how much water they generate until such time
Yes.
that the new system's installed.
I will make them aware of that, Mr. Beckley.
Okay, thank you.
So you're not aware that they have a plan to rent the house, like the house two doors down that rents for 20 people, 6 bedrooms?
I've not inquired of my clients as whether they propose to advertise this as Sleeping 22, but I have no reason to believe that they will do so.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? So Judy, you feel that waiving the inspection, that an inspection doesn't add anything to the situation right now?
No, I mean, I think basically what Bob Dubus did was an inspection, which all you can do for a cesspool is to open it up and look at it, make sure it's not full to the top and it's structurally sound. So, I can confirm that with him if the board would like it, as part of our approval.
Maybe something in writing from him, or?
Well, we do have something in writing.
Oh, okay.
It should have been in your package. Basically, it was what Bill read.
Yeah, we did get we did get something at the bottom of our packet attachment.
There were 2 documents for this particular property, 2 separate documents, and Bob's letter is attached to the second packet.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Judy, did I give you the Rick Judd plan?
Yes,
Okay, so.
yep.
Okay, other comments from the board? Questions? Okay, can I get a motion to waive the inspection and grant a 6-month extension for the 184 Barcliff Avenue property?
Motion approved.
Okay, we have the motion, a second? Ron, second? Okay, input from the public? All right, hearing none, we can take a vote, and I think we can do a voice vote, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say no. All right, that is granted.
Thank you very much, appreciate your time.
Probably should have stipulated that they can't rent it until the cesspool is fixed.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda is
I wouldn't be surprised.
discussion review of a preliminary short-term rental bylaw. And we have Katie Donovan, who is Director of the Department of Community Development for the town here. And she's agreed to come and answer some questions and provide some information. So we'll have her go first, I think, and kind of open it up to the board. And I might just ask her first, she's on the, I think she's the town liaison to the Economic Development Committee, but do you have any overall view of how something like this affects a town as a positive or a negative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I don't think we've looked at it closely enough at this point in time. This being a registration bylaw, rental registration, I don't see that it would have necessarily a negative effect in any way. I think it's it's reasonably written, and I think that, it takes into account, certainly the occupancy limits that are being looked at, looking at, the parking situation. I think that's been a concern for some people. I think, it's worth, sending it to the select board, as Bob had suggested, forming a committee to have us look at this, but anything that we may have missed or any other type of regulation would like to see put in place potentially. And then, having, certainly getting some community input as well. But I think that if that was, that would be the action I would have recommended as well for this.
Okay, I think our proposal is more than a registration. It would have the occupancy limit in the registration would,
Okay.
you'd sign a
Right.
document, there'd be rules and a lot more than just registrations, but
Sure, yeah,
Thank
thank you. When I was thinking that, I was thinking more like, we're not trying to stop them, we're not,
Correct.
at this point in time, we're not putting a zoning regulation in place to, to limit the number, or putting a cap on the number of rental registrations, which some communities have done. So I think if this is just certainly as it's produced, I don't see it having a negative economic impact. But
Yeah, I understand. We're not taking those further steps. And I think that the vast majority of renters are probably doing a responsible job and watching out for their neighbors, and it's a smaller percentage who are creating the problem. So, I mean, my own view was that the overall economic impact would not be great. But I'll open it up to other people on the committee for questions for Katie Donovan.
Just a question in terms of economic impact. Is there in any community a difference in taxation of homes that are used for short-term rental as opposed to homes that are not? And I'm specifically thinking about this house on Barcliff Road that rents for $28,000 a week and is fully rented for next year. And they are not paying a tax for this small hotel that they're renting.
so certainly through the state's requirements for short-term rental taxes, they
Right.
should be paying. And
But is that property tax? So I'm talking about property tax, something that town gets.
right, no, so the underlying
Yes.
use of that property is, I would assume, a single-family dwelling. I assume it's a single family. So the underlying land use is a single-family dwelling, and I assume that that's the way it's being taxed. So you are correct in
Right.
that.
Right.
How many
So,
bedrooms are in this house?
well, this house, if you go to the GIS system, it says 5 bedrooms. It was built in 1840 on 17,000 square feet. And apparently it was grandfathered, so it was 5 bedrooms on a relatively small lot. But they advertise 6 bedrooms, sleeps 20. And it rents for $4,000 a week, a day, $28,000 a week. And I went on VRBO, and it's 55% rented for July of next year already. And the neighbor that bought the house next door sent us a letter that was in our packet last week, complaining bitterly about all the noise and corruption coming from this property. The question is, this seems to be the way the town of Chatham is going,
So, yeah.
that you go drive down some streets and every third or fourth house has a rental sign out in front of it, which never was the case in the past. But if you can make 28,000, if you own a house and you live in Shrewsbury and you're only here for 6 weeks a year and you can rent the house from Columbus Day, from Memorial Day to Columbus Day at $28,000 a week, well, you're going to do that. And this is part of the reason we don't have enough water in Chatham, and this is also a problem for our septic systems. Because that septic system for that house is not designed for 20 people who are there all summer.
So that's the crux of the whole issue here. That's why we're coming up with this.
Right, but my question was-
I don't want to pick on one property in town when it's
No, there are
it's happening.
many properties
There are
like
many
that.
properties that are doing the similar thing, which is what got us here to begin
Right.
to
But
begin
my
with.
question was, is there a way the town can have a
Or it
different
should
property tax?
simply prohibit.
For a place that's
That's a little bit out of our
running- that's basically
jurisdiction.
running us.
I don't think we allow it and then tax it. I think we create a regulatory scheme that prevents that type of intensified, unintended use. So that house next summer would not be allowed to continue as they have.
Yeah. Thank you. If I could, Mr. Chairman, I think those are the types of issues that we could look at from a staff level. Once this is brought to the select board and they ask us to look at it, we can look at a whole host of other concerns that people may have and see whether or not they need to be incorporated into this specific bylaw or incorporated into something larger, if that's the case. But this is the starting point that would get us to those conversations.
Yeah, I agree. Our idea that we had discussed was to put forward just a simple short-term rental bylaw that we could get on the town warrant, hopefully in May, and with funding. And then, once that's established, there's a number of other things that could be done, but those would be later, maybe more difficult, more controversial, whatever. But we would try to keep it simple and something that's done in other towns and that we can pass in a timely way.
And
Go ahead.
and I would think that, certainly having an ad hoc group work on, either on this or something that may, grow from this, by running it by the committees such as the Economic Development Committee and, and other groups would be a prudent way to go, so that you could have that information back to you before town meeting. To have
Right.
that
We
information.
also, when we started this, we looked back and saw that in 2017, there was another working group putting forward a short-term rental bylaw, which had more to do with water. It was brought to the select board. They didn't turn it down. They referred it back to three committees: Finance Committee, Economic Development Committee, and Water and Sewer Committee for more input. And Board of Health, yeah, and more input. So, I mean, I'm thinking that the select board could propose a very similar kind of mechanism to get more information.
Right. I would think that would be the best way to go.
Let me ask you something that you may not want to answer. Do you think it's time-wise, it's reasonable for us to hope to get this on the town meeting in May as a warrant article with funding? The basic short-term rental bylaw?
Yes, from this point in time, I
Yes,
don't
you
see
said.
that as
Okay,
being
good.
a problem. And that's just based on how I know that the planning board operates when they're doing bylaw amendments,
Right.
thinking what their timelines typically are. I
All
would
right.
think that you would have the
And
time
then,
to do
and
that.
then it would take effect when?
I don't know, that would be a question that would have to come up.
And would it apply to next year's rental season if it was approved in May?
I think it depends on what's in there. If it requires an inspection, I think there's probably going to have to be a rolling inspection, so
Yes.
there may be a roll-in, phase-in kind of
Yes.
process that'll have to be determined later, I think.
Yeah, that would have to be part of the conversation, because as you know, if we do, well, not if, we require additional staff to implement, that staff wouldn't become available theoretically till July 1st. So, I think this is something that, you may look at like September 1 implementation date to capture the following summer, so basically you'd miss next summer, just because of the timeline. And, there's not necessarily an easy way around that with, the fiscal year starting in the middle of summer.
Yep.
It's always hard. So this may be something that goes into place for theoretically summer of 2024. Start at like September 1 or October 1, get the staff hired, get everything set up, and then the effective date is, when we know we can make it work.
And again, if we're putting occupancy restrictions into this bylaw, there's no way it's going to be able to be effective because these contracts
That's
are being signed now for
That's
next
true.
July.
So
That's right.
Carol?
I'm wondering if we can contact the various committees, like Water and Sewer and Community Development, everything else, and get their feedback before it goes to the select board, so that we have everything they want, instead of kicking it back to the committees, we'll have their feedback.
Yeah, I think
Before we
we can
change.
talk about the next step, whether we forward this just to the select board and then let them go through their process, or whether we jump ahead and send it out to all.
We
the
don't wanna
committees. But my impression, my thought is, we should get it to the select board, the bylaw draft, as soon as possible, and let them begin working however they want to do it, instead of delaying it by a month, because I think the timeline, Bob knows more. I think by December or January, if you're including funding, you need the bylaw and the funding all set. That gives us 2 or 3 months.
Right.
So you don't have a month or two to work through other committees
Okay,
necessarily.
I was just concerned that it might happen, what happened in 2017, that it gets kicked back and then.
Right.
Well,
nothing happens.
My feeling is that we are going to continue discussion. It'll continue to be an agenda item, and it'll still be an important thing for us.
Okay.
So I think.
We don't wanna-
We'll be watching all that.
We don't want to prejudge what the select board feelings might be. So if we give it to them and only them as step one. They can either embrace it and forward it, with their blessing into,
Yeah.
broader, or maybe they back burner it, or maybe they're not quite ready to do that. But I don't want to be presumptuous.
Well, as I had suggested at your last meeting, my recommendation was you get it to a point where you're comfortable with it, which I think you're there or pretty close. You forward to the Board of Selectmen with a recommendation to establish a working group and to forward it to this list of committees and potentially others.
Correct.
As I said, you really want to give it to them and give them the guidance that you want to see them implement.
Okay.
As opposed to give it to them cold and expect them to think about, all
Right.
right, what do we do with this?
Right.
I think you want to lead them to some extent.
So with
to
the
where you
bylaw,
guys
there'll-
want to get to.
There'll be a letter that Judy will put together, an introductory letter for the select board that'll go through something like Bob just said and a number of other things. And point out that in a way, it's continuing the work of the 2017 working group and key right off that, same committees and all. But let me come back to Katie for a sec here. Any thoughts on who would administer the law? Originally, in this, we had said Board of Health, and then Judy has changed it to a more general Town of Chatham, because that's to be determined later. What department, do you have any thoughts on who is best equipped, or how this would work if there's 2 new employees? Is she volunteering?
Well, not necessarily, but I'm not opposed to it either. So I think what we would do is, looking at it as it's written right now, it's really based on Board of Health regulations, and my suggestion is that would be the appropriate avenue. However, we work very closely together on some inspections as it is with the building department and Health and Natural Resources. So I think that developing a team approach from both departments is likely going to be needed regardless of where the administration comes from. But I think, as we move forward with this, if there are any other, if there were any other regulations that were put into effect that didn't have to do with the Board of Health, then yes, it may be more appropriate coming out of Community Development Department. But I think that we can assess that as we move forward based on what the final regulation would be.
Okay, good. I have one other follow-up, and then I'll open it up again to the board. Do you know anything about, I sort of reviewed some other Cape towns, and a number of towns have such bylaws, just quickly, I think it was Barnstable and Dennis and Harwich. Those towns don't, are you familiar with the rental laws in those towns, whether there's problems or not, how they've worked, or any input you can give us there?
I haven't heard anything positive or negative either way. I think that I know Dennis has had a rental bylaw in place for quite a while. And so that's, I've never heard, I haven't heard any complaints there. I haven't heard complaints from other towns.
Right.
I know that Judy had mentioned our new Housing and Sustainability Director, Gloria McPherson. She had actually come from Barnstable, and she did some research for Barnstable, more looking at short-term rentals. And I think that she and I will collaborate with Bob and Judy on the letter to the Select Board to talk about what else they could potentially consider above and beyond these regulations. She was not able to be here today. There was another meeting that she needed to be in attendance at. So, but I think that was kind of our thought, was that we could all work together as a team to then bring something forth to the Select Board, and then, we would continue to work together after that.
Some of these other towns have their rental bylaws, not short-term, the rental. No,
exactly.
This proposal is a short-term rental bylaw, less than 31 days, and I think the thinking is it's simpler to start, and it captures the big influx in the summer, basically, with the seasonal rentals. So that's, I think, why we're starting there.
Sure.
Other questions from board members?
Do you know whether these other towns have put a cap on occupancy?
I don't know that.
Yes. Judy?
You mean occupancy in the units themselves?
A
Oh, sure,
limit- a
I think
limit?
they all do. Some are based on the housing code, which is, based on the square footage of the bedrooms and the total space, and some are 2 people per bedroom, that type of thing, which is what we're talking about.
And we have some that have the 2 bedrooms, 2 per bedroom plus 2 formula?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. I'd have to look.
Okay.
From what I've seen, it's been 2 people per bedroom. I personally think that's a little restrictive in some of the size of these houses, and,
Right.
you know, people have a couple extra kids. They might want to have them sleeping in a side room.
Okay.
My understanding is that an occupancy limit is pretty standard for these rental bylaws.
Okay.
It's pretty much standard. And I think Orleans has suggested in their preliminary work, 2 per bedroom plus 2. Many of the other towns have just 2 per bedroom. But that's,
Okay.
in this proposal, to be determined with a lot of discussion, because there's,
I actually worked for the town of Dennis and did rental bylaw work for them and years ago, and their bylaw was strictly by square footage. So you're 50 square foot per person for a sleeping room. And then it was something like 75 square feet for occupancy of the total building. So when you measured all the rooms and took the square footage, you could have, some of these houses are so big, 20 people in them. So even though you're talking 2 people per bedroom, or 2 or 3 people, depending on the size of the bedroom, the total occupancy of the building could be 20, 22 people. Most of the people that registered their dwellings did not want that number of people in their houses. So they would say, no, we don't want that, so.
But our bylaw would not embrace.
No, ours was, we're looking at trying to, you know, keep it to Title V for sewerage capacity and water usage to 2 people per bedroom.
and I think age of occupancy people is to be determined, probably with further discussion, because there's, you know, if it's an infant or something.
I've got one other question. When I was reading through this and taking note of the special concerns, this is hopefully going to help address noise, public disturbance comes up. Do we have in place right now in our town the ability to enforce a noise?
I believe that's the police department.
And they are, you think we're okay with what they have?
Yes, we have a noise bylaw in Chatham that's been very successful over the years.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Other questions specifically for Katie, or other aspects that she can help us with? Yeah.
If I could, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I watched your last week's meeting, and I know that there was some questions about the parking. And one of the recommendations I was going to make is that as this moves forward, actually, when the application is first reviewed, there could be a limit set on the number of cars that would be allowed through the rental through the rental application registration. I've seen that in some rentals, that they specifically put in their rental ad that no more than 2 cars or no more than 4 cars. And so I think by us calling out those numbers as they're coming in for their application, that could be a way that we could try to control some of those issues.
And that would involve parking on the property or
On
at
the-
the curb?
On the property, again, if parking at the street is allowed, we certainly can't control that, but.
Can't control
but-
that.
But a lot of times, the homeowners want a limit on the number of cars anyway, and so often they put the restriction in their rental ad.
So you could have 10 people, but they would have an incentive not to all drive their own vehicles
Right.
there. They'd
Right.
have to carpool in some way
Right.
to
Yes,
reduce the footprint of the cars.
yes.
I like that.
Other thoughts, questions for Katie Donovan? Okay. Any other comments or just general observations that would help us, or? I think we're there with our bylaws, so we're hopefully at the point where we'll move it on to the select board and get things moving.
Yeah, no,
But
certainly.
you'll obviously be a part of this thing going forward.
Sure, I look forward to working with you all and with
And
Bob and Judy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And our letter of transmittal that will accompany with our recommendations will share our timeline hope, right? That our plan is to bring this to town meeting. And- Okay, that'll be all embraced in the recommendations, okay.
Well, let me ask Bob put them on the spot. Do you think the timeline of getting the bylaw with funding in the Maytown warrant is reasonable, a reasonable goal?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I do. It's just, we're starting now. We're not starting at the end, December at the last minute. So, yeah, I think there's time.
okay, great. All right, so we could finish with the Katie questions, and then if people are ready, we can go on to the revised, the final preliminary draft that Judy provided us and go through that a little bit point by point, if we're ready for that. Okay, thank you very much. Very helpful.
Thank you.
Sounds positive. Yes. Very positive. Okay, so Judy sent out sort of a mini revision of the bylaw preliminary draft that we looked at before. And I had just one general question. If we forward this preliminary bylaw draft, do you include the comments sort of on the side for them to look at? Because some of them,
Yeah,
are
I
important.
probably would not.
Would not. Or we could include it in the letter, or?
Well, unless the board has any issues with these, we would pretty much remove the track changes, like where you see cross-outs and things like that. If the board's okay with that, taking that language out, we would go ahead and remove it and give them a clean, if you will, copy.
Right, something like,
Without comments and stuff like that. Now,
Yeah.
there may be some, like we talked about with Katie and we talked about last week, as to like what department is the lead. We may leave some comment in there about that. We'd probably try to put the comment in the body as opposed to off to the side. Because whenever you have the comments off to the side like that, they make the whole thing smaller and harder for people to
I
read.
see, yeah.
But we could certainly, if there's something like that we definitely want to retain, we could put that in the body as in parentheses or something like that.
And the fees, we could just say TBD, to be determined, or
I
do we
think
want to
you'd-
set, what do we set
I
forth?
think
Fee
we
and
probably
occupancy
want to
number to be
propose a
determined.
number,
Okay,
and then that would be part of discussion.
Say that again?
Propose a number for a fee.
Propose a number.
And then,
Okay.
yeah, I'm a firm believer in putting everything in there as
Okay.
opposed to just leaving it open-ended for somebody else to think about, because
And
I
how-
find they never think about it.
How about the calculation for occupancy from bedrooms?
We should-
put
I
something in
think if
there?
you want the 2 per bedroom plus 2, that's what you put in here.
Or the 2 per bedroom, which is very restrictive.
Or just 2 per bedroom.
But, yeah, okay, all right, good. Okay, that was my first question, and then, so I'll just point out a couple things, and then we'll open it up for more comments. But Judy has scratched out where it says Board of Health and just changed it to Town of Chatham, because it's
Yep.
to be determined exactly
Right.
who's going to get the employees and who will do this thing. That's pretty straightforward. And then open is well, let's see. Then there's the fee, which we can talk about putting in there, and the bedroom calculation for occupancy. Street parking is pretty much decided, I think.
I can add, at Katie's suggestion, possibly, 2 cars per dwelling or something, if we wanted to add that to parking, if you thought that was reasonable, or,
Well,
I don't know.
I wouldn't limit it to 2 cars because their driveway may be able to accommodate 4 cars. I think the wording should be depending on how many cars the driveway can accommodate.
okay.
If
how do you do that, though?
well, based on the occupancy. If you're gonna allow 6 people, you could allow 3 cars if they have adequate parking.
I think
Yeah, it's kind of hard for
I
us
think it
to.
may get complicated because most of it just says cars and assume that the owner can park the cars wherever they want, on the property or driveway or the shells or the gravel or whatever. So I don't know. I don't know how other towns have done that, actually.
Maybe the owners should say how many,
Cap
put a
cars.
cap on.
We can put it in as a,
When they do their application, or when the inspection's done, they could say, well, the driveway can accommodate 3 cars, 4 cars.
Or we could simply say, we allow one car per bedroom. You know,
If it can
you know,
accommodate it,
because
but
in
what if-
general, to go out and try to assess how many cars,
Yeah.
you know, what if they have a Mini Cooper, or what if they have a big, you know, I would like to just say that you have one car for every 2 occupants. Maximum of one car per 2
What if the
occupants.
driveway does not accommodate 4 cars?
Then they
It's a
could
four-bedroom
park,
home.
then they could park at the edge of the driveway. I don't really, I mean, I think if it's a 4-bedroom house, it's usually got a big enough, you know, driveway to accommodate, you know, if you have teenage kids, whatever, you get cars, you know, people will tend to have a car, you know, more than 1 or 2 cars if you have a 4-bedroom house. I don't know, I just think trying to assess the
Gotta be simple.
capacity of the driveway will get kind of complicated. So if we said 1 car per
2
2 occupants, and then if we would limit it to 2 people per bedroom, and then say an occupant is an individual over the age of 4, then if people want to bring kids and have them sit, you know, sleep in another room, that's fine, then they can. If the kid's a 3-year-old or 1-year-old, you know, because one of the comments that I heard was, well, what if, you know, if we limit it to 2 per bedroom and then people have children, you know, that would be overly restrictive if we didn't allow them to have the children.
Where are all these children gonna sleep? Don't
Well-
they sleep in a bedroom, in a bed?
They could have a pull-out couch and, you know, a couch, I mean, if you limited it to 2 people per bedroom, and then the owners wanted to rent it to 4 people who are gonna bring 2 children with them, the owner would have to have some provision in the way the house is laid out to accommodate the extra 2 children. Either have a sofa bed or, you know, something like that, but.
That all depends on, like,
Carol?
the ages of the children.
Well, that's what I said, like 4 years, you know, that
Otherwise-
an occupant is defined as somebody over the age of 3 or 4.
I thought it was 1.
Well, we can make it whatever we want.
Right.
It's not defined in this.
Yeah, I'm thinking, this is a preliminary draft, so those are discussions that will be ongoing, and they're, you know, a little complicated maybe to decide exactly what to do, but maybe we should just make a more general thing in the paragraph of parking, say that our parking limit will be established, and then let the committees and the select board and different groups decide how to do that.
That's what Bob said, is put it out there and let people chew on it,
Okay.
right?
Well, I thought what Bob said is that we
Propose it.
should put out what our suggestion is.
Yes.
Not to put it out as,
As an open
it'll be
question.
determined by somebody else.
Well, I like the part where, and whatever the driveway can accommodate, because lots of times you'll get cars parked along the curbs or, you know, down the street, and so if your driveway can accommodate 4 cars, no problem. But
If you limit
it
the-
won't accommodate 6 or 8 from
I
everybody
have
else.
a feeling that's why Orleans left it the way it is, where it just says, there shall be no off-premise parking without the permission of the off-premises owner. So,
Well, if we
What Carol
wanted
says
to, if we
would
wanted to
require
do it,
an inspection, like a parking inspection, when you inspect for bedrooms, I guess that person would inspect the driveway and the parking situation and come up with a number?
Well,
Bob?
or we
Can
could
I-
just say that all cars need to be parked
on the
in the
premises.
driveway, not on the front lawn or the front. That if you want to limit it to the driveway, you would just write the
Right.
proposal
says,
that parking has to be in the
On
driveway.
the driveway,
Can
okay.
I propose some language?
Sure.
All parking associated with the operation of short-term rental, including without limitation non-occupant guest parking, shall be on the registered premises based on the capacity of the driveway. And then
Sounds good.
strike the next part of that paragraph that
Then
talks
the
about
capacity would be,
no on-premise parking without
capacity would
permission.
be
Sounds
decided
good.
by inspection?
can you say that again, on the registered premises?
Shall be on the registered premises based on the capacity of the driveway.
Okay, that's,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's perfect.
Pretty simple.
Do any of our rental properties in town not have driveways?
It could.
We don't know yet.
There are homes that don't, that have just curb parking.
Right.
Excuse me, does that mean if somebody's got a two-car driveway and they want 4 cars in the street, what are you gonna do there?
You wouldn't be able to do it.
And that's what's, that's happening right on my street, so I know.
Right, well, then wouldn't it be the police that would,
Well, I think we partly had this, I mean, and what Katie said was, we can control parking on the premises, but we can't control curb parking, because it's open to everybody.
It's open to anybody.
There's no way to control, if there aren't no parking signs on the street, you can park on the street. But I
So-
agree, it's an annoyance, but I don't know that we can control that,
So
or
that-
it can be controlled.
In River Bay, for instance, because there are no parking signs, a home in River Bay, if they wanted, could have 6 cars parked along the side of the street in front of their rental.
Yeah, like I have said, what, can you restrict the parking to on-site, total parking on-site, but there's always a caveat, well, no, we can't control curb parking.
But I like Dick's suggestion of allowing, just fix a limit on how many cars can be there.
Associated with the rental, just say,
Yes.
give a number,
Just 1 car per 2 people.
and then not get into the curb parking versus driveway parking.
Right.
Yeah, so if it's.
It'd be less
so if it's
disruptive to the
4-bedroom, you can have
community.
4 cars,
Right.
2 bedrooms, 2 cars. Now,
but what Bob said, it's just limiting it to the driveway.
yeah, but
What if you
we're,
said premises?
we're saying that a parking limit for the rental, and not distinguish whether it's.
On the
per-
driveway or
driveway
in the
parking.
curb.
And then, you know, if there's a lot of curb parking associated with the rental and and somebody
Okay,
makes a
how's this?
complaint, there'll be a number.
So how do you know those cars?
All parking associated with the operation of short-term rental, including without limitation, non-occupant guest parking shall be on the registered premises and shall not exceed 1 car per bedroom. You know, I just.
Okay, I think that's a good
Keep
start.
in mind,
Right.
folks, I don't think you necessarily have to get to the absolute be-all, end-all
Yes.
tonight. The goal here is to get something that you're
the discussion
comfortable
going.
sending out. This,
Yeah.
you know, we'll include the PD, planning board, and everybody when we send this out. They deal with parking on a lot more occasions than you do.
That's true.
So we may hear some good feedback from them.
Yeah, I
You know,
think that's a good suggestion.
That sounds good. That's.
All right.
We're
And
going to
then,
have
John?
occupancy be 2 per bedroom plus 2. So the parking should be 1 vehicle per,
Bedroom,
no,
Per bedroom.
per bedroom.
per 2 occupants. And that reflects, that allows a car for the plus 2.
I think the plus 2,
Okay.
I think it's kids, I think you're sort of thinking of having.
I think we want to do away with the +2. Go away with the
Okay,
+2
well,
and
let's-
allow
let's-
them to bring kids,
Let's finish.
but not 2 adults.
Okay.
Do we say shall not exceed 1 car per 2 occupants over the age of 8, when do you
Right.
get your driver's license, 18?
No, you're mixing.
16? Shall not exceed
Depends on-
1 car per,
It's getting complicated.
1 per bedroom.
Maybe you go back to what you originally had.
based on the
You
capacity
could,
of the
you could just,
driveway?
you could say occupancy divided by 2.
I don't
Go back to
understand.
what he originally had.
I hate to say this, when I read including without limitation, non-occupant, I don't know what that means. It's got too many negatives in it.
So I've rented the house out for my wife and I, and we're having our son and daughter come down for my wife's birthday party. They are not staying at this house. They're just coming for the birthday party. Those, the way I read it, those would be non-occupant guests. They are not staying at the house, but they're there visiting. Or my son and daughter, my son and daughter-in-law and the 2 grandkids come down because they want to spend the day at the beach. But they're staying in another town on the Cape.
Gotcha.
Those would be non-occupant guests, the way I
Gotcha, okay,
interpret it.
thank you.
All right?
All right, so on what Bob said was, you could say 1 car per bedroom, or depending on what we use for the occupancy, 1 car per bedroom plus 1, if we, depends how we go with that number.
We've got to
Say
make
1
it,
car per bedroom,
Just say
as a
could-
starter.
You could propose, You could have multiple choice here.
Let's-
You could have
let's-
these different options and see what kind of feedback you get.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
that's
I think
another
if we
way to go
say
about it.
1 car per bedroom, there'll be plenty of feedback and discussion on that, and
Okay, 1
whatever
car per
comes,
bedroom.
whatever happens. Is that, are people satisfied with that? 1 car per bedroom, and then discussion to follow.
Okay.
Yeah, okay,
Remember, this is only a draft.
right, that's the parking. Now,
But we better decide what we want to do, whether we want to do 2 bedrooms, 2 people per bedroom, or 2.
that's okay, that's,
Plus 2.
Well, that's the
well,
next.
we'll take things one in an order. Before that was the fee. And then we'll come back to that last question John was talking about. The fee that's established, I think in Orleans, the fee was $175. In many towns, it was $100. If you think of the fee,
The fee in Orleans is, I think, $50 for the first 4.
maybe it was a preliminary one then.
First, I'd have to.
But anyway,
It's not as high, it's different, they changed it in Orleans.
the thinking was
lowered
the fee would cover the costs if we estimate that it'll be 2 employees plus some website work. And we have maybe 1,000 rentals. If the fee were 150, that's $150,000, which, does that cover probably the cost of 2 employees and some website work? I would guess so. I don't know for sure, it's going to be a guess, but I'm thinking not 50 or 100 probably isn't going to be enough. 150, it might be, and I don't think it's onerous considering how much money you can make on these rentals, so I don't think it's a problem. But what does Bob think?
I think 150 is reasonable in today's day and age.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the time you put benefits and everything in,
Yeah.
you know, you get to 150 very fast with
Mm-hmm.
2 employees, unless you're trying to pay them $30,000 a year. You know, 150 would probably be the minimum.
I think 150 is fair for a registration fee.
And to go back to the 2, or 2 plus 1, I think our goal is to bring the water and the sewer under control. I think we want to try to keep the occupants as low as we can,
Right.
reasonably.
That's the next item. And I think Judy had suggested 150, so are we happy with putting 150 in there?
Yes.
I'm okay with 150, but I have a,
It's going to be, it'll depend on what other estimates will be later on, but that's a start, I
part
think.
of my brain is going, well, what's our inspection frequency going to be? Because if we're going to inspect all these every year, that's very different in cost than inspecting once every 5 years, right? And then you get into the cost to our town of inspecting a 5-bedroom home is going to be more than a 2-bedroom home. So do we want anything reflected in the fees? I like 150. I think 150.
And that's an annual fee, right?
Yes.
150, it's an annual fee?
The Orleans fee is $50 plus $50 for each bedroom over a total of 2.
Oh, God.
So if
So
you
a
have 3
4-bedroom
bedrooms,
would
it's
be
150.
I think 150 is good.
Yeah, I think
It's an
that's-
annual fee.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
I got
Ron?
one question. Are these going to be full-time, year-round jobs or just,
Well, I think it's to be determined, but
I mean, we would
estimate of-
request 2 full-time people, administrative and an inspector person, so.
And the
and obviously, the initial inspections, you know, they'd have to sort of be a rolling thing. It would take a
Yes.
while to get them all
I can
done.
understand getting
There'll
started.
be like a year delay anyway, probably. Carol?
I mean, okay.
Carol, did I interrupt you?
No.
Oh,
And then some of
John?
these inspections would be primed by complaints,
Yes.
because once you get this out there,
right.
you know, the next door neighbor will
Ongoing.
have a number that they can call if
Right.
the house has 18 people and it's only approved for 6.
It will take, I think it's going to take a
Some
year
time.
to get everybody registered, and then, like you said, we'll catch people as we go along and notify them of the law, and we'll just start registering people, and then we'll have an annual renewal process, so.
Right. I like the idea of having an affidavit where the applicant is attesting to certain facts.
Yep.
And that removes the pressure for us to have to necessarily get into each and every one.
Right.
Because we have a representation from them that this is what is there. And that allows us to then decide what we can afford in terms of routine inspections. After we do them for a while, we'll know whether it takes 2 hours or 3 hours of actual staff time to do, different inspections, and we'll be able to pace ourselves.
Right, and all this is down the road some. If we just get the draft done, then everything else can come into place
Yes.
as we go along, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good, so we have that settled, and then, I think then we will get to, the occupancy requirements, and that's on this page 3 at the bottom, and, that opens the discussion of, how you decide on the occupancy number, which is important, and as Dick said, our interest and our initial purpose was an occupancy limit to judge how much the water and sewer septic systems are being used instead of basing it on number of bedrooms and then assuming that tells us what the use is, which just doesn't work very well in today's Chatham. I think that's the thinking that I have on the whole thing. But I'll open it up for comments, Dick.
And isn't the Title V septic system designed to accommodate about 2 people per bedroom?
Yes.
Yeah, Title V is based on 2 people per bedroom and a certain water use
Right.
factor.
So why would we have a document that said a rental can have 2 people per bedroom plus 2? When, we have a septic system that's designed for 2 people per bedroom. And these people, these houses then would be occupied all season long, potentially, by extra people, and, that's not what we're trying to do here,
Well, let me make a devil's
be a devil's advocate.
a devil's advocate, because there are other reasons that Chatham would benefit having 2 bedrooms, 2 people per bedroom plus 2, and some of those would be economic benefit. Some of them would be the money that residents that own homes have, that are trying to make outside income. Having a bit more visitors is good for the town
You mean it would make it
economically.
would make it easier for them
really.
to rent?
Would make it easier for residents who own homes to rent. It would bring more people than otherwise to frequent the restaurants. I mean,
Well, I would
I-
argue that if you had a referendum in town and asked the taxpayers in town, do they want us to design something that will encourage more visitors in the summer?
the net
That
effect of this
wouldn't
is gonna be to
be-
reduce the visitors, isn't it?
Well,
If this goes through as we have drafted it, it'll reduce the amount of rental visitors, wouldn't it?
John, I think,
You don't think so?
no, I think the vast majority of people are
Couple
renting
of houses,
these things
maybe.
pretty reasonably. There's a few instances where these occupancies are way overboard.
Okay.
So I think overall, it's gonna control the bad actors, but it's probably not gonna change the overall
Okay.
numbers all that much,
All
with all
right.
the pressure. I think when you get down to a calculation of +2 or not, you get into the kids. If they have an infant, if they have a 1-year-old,
Okay.
does that factor in? And Judy says that 2 bedrooms alone is restrictive. We've talked about the age thing. Is it below a certain age, not an occupant? That you would factor in there. That's what I think. But I don't, I'm sort of for the more restrictive one. It'll all be talked out later. But there may be something about age. Children below a certain age, and I don't know if there's a precedent for that.
The definition here of occupant is any individual residing overnight in a short-term rental. So that's, and the counting everybody, no matter what age. And the housing code does not define an occupant different than that. I thought that there was something about 6 months and
1 year.
And how could we even control that? I mean, how would we even go about
Right.
knowing if the child is 5 or 2 months
It
old?
would be through a complaint and then an inspection. That's pretty much how it would be, which wouldn't be much. I mean, a lot of the a lot of it's going to be just the fact that they register, they sign something with all the rules, they agree in writing, it's posted inside, and there's an inspection process with fines, and they theoretically could, lose their ability to rent if they had enough violations. So and that's pretty much how it's going to be enforced. It's
If
not-
they were inspected, so 9 times out of 10, somebody's going to come and they're going to do the 2 people per bedroom. And if they have a child, they're just going to bring the child because what are the chances they're going to be inspected that week that the child's there?
Yeah,
Who knows?
yeah.
I mean,
Probably.
It
all
would
we
be
can-
very difficult to,
Right.
police that.
Exactly. And all we can do is just try to limit 2 per bedroom. And if we get that, that's really good, I think.
All right, so, Carol, did you have a question? I mean, a comment?
Are we gonna determine
When you go to
what about children?
Well, it's up to you. I mean, we could say, an occupant.
counting them
An
as an
occupant is
occupant or
anybody
not?
over 1 year, or something, so that any infants would be excluded.
Right,
So,
I could see excluding an infant.
Yeah, I
A
can-
5-year-old, they're taking up a bed and space,
Right.
and they're an occupant.
They're using the toilets, I mean, they're using the water and the shower, right.
They're an occupant.
is that a-
Explain to everybody.
Ed, did you have a comment?
I do.
Or a thought on the occupancy number?
turn your mic on.
Leading up to my business is the fact that
It's a gremlin.
what happened?
Yeah.
We've got a 3-bedroom house. Next door has got, they live in the cellar, they have a second and third floor. Every time they come down, they have people, so there's 4 cars at least in the parking period, and the rest of them are on the street. And the street is very strict. So that's that's,
What do you think about calculating the occupancy number based on bedrooms? 2 per bedroom or 2 per bedroom plus 2, more restrictive or less restrictive?
well, I think in some places, that's adequate. But there's also a place that it isn't,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, I'm thinking that,
We leave it at 2 per
Bob, go ahead.
bedroom.
Yeah, let me chime in here and muddy the waters for you a little bit.
Oh, good.
As if isn't already. Title V says 2 persons per bedroom. That's based on, the actual Title V number is 110 gallons of water used per bedroom. Okay? We have found, through the comprehensive wastewater management plan, and all the work that we did looking at number of bedrooms and water use in this town back in the 90s and all, when we were putting the CWMP together, and it's been borne out in other communities, that's really an overestimate of water use. That the average household only uses maybe 2/3 of that number. So around between 60 and 70 gallons per day versus the 110. So your septic system is designed based on 110. We based the sewer design on 110. But in reality, the average household is only using 60 to 70.
So it's a little.
So I guess what I'm doing here is I'm arguing for 2 people per bedroom plus 2.
Us too.
But the reason that the number is low is because most 4-bedroom houses don't have all 4 bedrooms occupied. If you're renting the house,
It's based on that,
Yeah.
yes. It's also based on the fact that Title V, the numbers were done before a lot of our water conservation measures for things
The
like
flush
toilets,
Yep.
low-flow shower heads,
Right.
and all those other things that we've been doing or getting people to do over the last 10, 15, 20 years. So I agree. Some of it is in fact based on the fact that, you know, a four-bedroom house might only have an older couple in it.
Right.
But on the average, there's also a four-bedroom house where there's a mom and dad and 5 teenage kids, you know, that are doing
Right.
a load of laundry a day versus the other folks that are only doing a load of laundry a week. So in reality, it all evens out, if you will. But I think the greater thing that isn't necessarily taken into account with some of the flow numbers in Title V is water conservation. And I'm not talking about in the immediate
Right.
drought situation. I'm talking about the longer-term water conservation with low-flow toilets and shower heads and all those things that we've been convincing people to do. You know, dishwashers are much more efficient now than they ever were, all those things. So I think if, you know, I guess I am arguing for the 2 per bedroom plus 2.
Because of the
as-
over-design, the average over-design
Because I
of the
think the
sep-
systems are designed and have that enough capacity to handle that without being problematic.
Right.
Yes.
In my review of the different towns, many of which in the Cape have these rental bylaws, to me, most all of them were 2 occupants per bedroom. That was it. That's most. Harwich is like that, and I think Barnstable and Dennis are. That's more restrictive. We're just doing a preliminary thing. It's going to get discussed. This will all get bounced around. We want to put a number down. I would suggest we do 2 per bedroom and maybe add an occupant is over the age of 1 and just throw it out there and see what happens. That's not the final say. We're not doing the final calculation here. We're putting something down that, like Bob says, to
You
get the
could say
discussion
something
going.
like two occupants per bedroom and 2 additional occupants provided they're under the age of 5. You know, something like that.
Under the age of 5.
Yeah, that would be a reasonable way to do it, I think.
Yeah.
And,
I think that's good. That'll put something down as a starting point for conversation. So
Yep.
2 per bedroom plus 2 under the age of 5.
Additional.
2 additional under the age of 5. I think that's,
That's a partial, yeah.
yeah, sort of in between. A start, right. That's what it is. It's a start. And I think this thing is going to change with time and so forth. Now, okay, so we can put that in there. And then, all right, so other comments about what Judy should put in this, in this preliminary draft. I'm hoping that we can sort of agree on things tonight and then say, okay, Judy's going to put this in the draft, and then that we can get this out without going through another meeting of us, which just delays it 2 weeks. I don't think we've done anything here that's real controversial. Is Judy comfortable with that?
Sure, yep.
Sure.
Put
Okay,
that together.
so, go ahead. Ron, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I have one question on, where it mentions about non-transferable, I think it's Article F. What if someone owns the property in an LLC, a limited liability corporation?
Say that again?
Right now, it says cannot be transferred to an owner. But if someone owns the property in an LLC, which is a limited liability corporation, and a lot of people do that for the protection.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, I think there's a paragraph in there that you have to identify the manager or the person of the LLC.
Contact
Takes
information.
responsibility, so that there will always be a person,
A
name,
name and a number.
and a phone number with 24-hour availability,
I
no
missed
matter
that.
what the form of ownership is in, trust, LLC, or
A lot of
or
people who rent
individual.
probably don't that way.
But that's notification. That's not what Ron is getting to, which is the non-transferability clause.
Yes.
I would think that if you have an LLC, they generally have more than one person named. And so let's say you had an LLC with John, and you were moving to Florida, and you were letting John now operate. I would think the LLC would be broad enough that that would be covered.
I own property, used to own property off Cape, and we owned it in LLC. And my wife and myself were the people that were the
Yeah,
LLC.
right.
Oh, I see. So if it's an LLC that incorporates a whole bunch of names,
Yeah,
the whole purpose of it
Corporate
is it
office.
doesn't really transfer.
right.
So this transfer language here for the occupancy limit would then move
Wouldn't apply
along?
necessarily.
It would, say that
Wouldn't
again?
apply necessarily,
Wouldn't apply.
right.
Would
But
it-
we
would
can
it-
ask that question of town council.
Yeah, that's
as
right.
we
That's a
get
pretty
into
con-
this
but
kind of
that's- yeah.
process.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, the most recent version of the Orleans proposal that I read does not establish occupancy limits, or am I wrong on that?
Yes, it does. I'm
does,
looking
yep.
at it right now online.
It
I
does.
thought Orleans went to just a registration and left off some of the finer points.
Maximum number of occupants in a short-term rental shall be 2 per bedroom plus additional 2 occupants.
No.
This is what's in the Orleans town meeting warrant for the special town meeting.
They have the +2?
Yep,
Are you sure?
I'm looking at it right here.
I can look.
But we want to add a little bit more, put an age in there, right?
We were saying 2 per bedroom plus
Two.
2 additional occupants under the age of 5. Sort of an in-between thing that, but this is, in writing to be discussed.
It'll be discussed. Yeah.
And they're going before their town meeting?
This is their warrant for their special town meeting on, I believe it's October 17th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, other
Interesting to watch.
questions? One thing I just have some thoughts about the cover letter that we send with this. I think should have some important information for the select board or whoever to look at. We can talk about that as the next item, unless people have some other questions. Okay. So Judy will make up the introductory letter that will go with this, and hopefully we can get this out, like tomorrow. Just kidding.
What about by midnight tonight?
Okay, but the introductory letter would, it would state, as I've said several times, our interest in the occupancy limit, instead of assuming bedrooms gives usage of water and sewer, the occupancy limit is what we need. We've struggled counting bedrooms, and these newer homes have many extra rooms which can be used for anything, but that would be in there.
We have comments from the public, too.
Oh,
So,
yeah, okay, afterwards. And then we would include prominently our goal of getting the bylaw with funding as a town warrant article for the May meeting. It would include a suggestion of the fee, which is going to be in here anyway, I guess now. Point out that these bylaws are not new in the Cape. We're not breaking new ground or setting some sort of precedent. There are rental bylaws in a number of towns. You can make the case that we're catching up, I think, more than we're doing something really out there. And then, as Bob had said, follow up on his recommendation to recommend specifically that the select board consider forming a working group and sending it on to the 3 committees, which was Finance, Economic Development, and Water and Sewer Committee, with the goal of a town warrant for the meeting in May. So that would be sort of the cover letter. Any other thoughts about what Judy should put in this letter to give it a little more oomph?
I just have a question about the quote, "working group."
Yes.
We've worked on this a lot. The select board's going to work on it. They'll send it to community development. They'll work on it. But do we have to pull people out from every committee and start a working group when we've already done so much?
Well, I think that's something that the select board probably would decide. We could make reference to the 2017 working group, which had 2 select board members, 2 health board members, a member of the health department, Bob Duncanson, and Katie Donovan. That was the working group before.
Right. I just feel like we've done so much work already that with pulling it in from the other, the other committees the other committees will also comment. And I'm just afraid that if we get into another group, it's just going to prolong the process.
So, I mean,
really do.
are you saying you're sort of against a working group?
I don't know why we need a working group. I think all the committees will work on it, they'll evaluate it and come back with their feedback, and we put it all together.
To whom? To us or to the select? board?
Probably to us, I guess, and then to the select board or whatever.
I think the process with the working group is to get town staff, like Katie was alluding to, if there's any other ways we want to go about this, as far as any zoning issues and things like that, so we can all put our areas of expertise together and go over this draft that we have and shine it up so that it will work for town meeting. And on every
But
level.
I agree with you, Carol, the concern about slowing things down, but
Yes,
Bob kind of alluded to the fact that a working group is a common way to approach these things for the select board, so kind of go in that direction.
I think it's
But it
easy,
would include health board members, so we would be on that, we would decide, we'd talk later, but we would be on that, having input, and I also think we would keep it on our agenda, so we would talk about it every week, and we could forward more recommendations or whatever as time goes on, I think.
and there would be a timeline that if this working
Well, I
group
think
does come, it would be, okay, by such and such a date, we need your comments or your feedback
Yeah.
back to us, so that it doesn't get lost again.
Would we, within our time frame, would we do a public meeting, a public hearing on this before we finalize?
Who does the public hearing? Each board, each
No, no.
committee, or does the select board, or?
It would depend on how it ultimately ends up for implementation.
Right.
If it stays within Board of Health purview, then you guys would hold the public hearing. If it becomes broader, then probably the Board of Selectmen would hold a public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah. It would kind of just depend on who's got the lead.
And the lead should be normally left up to the select board for what they want? Do we make a suggestion, or is it something we would want or not want?
You could certainly make a suggestion, yeah.
We want it to
But
be
I
an
think,
ad
you know,
hoc group?
I
or-
think at this point, it's still
Early
early
enough.
enough in the process here. And you could tell from Katie's comments as well, there's still other issues that need to be talked about and fleshed out. So exactly what this may look like 6 weeks from now, maybe a little bit different, maybe not, you know.
But in this preliminary letter, we can state that a couple times. The goal is the May town meeting.
Right.
December, January is the deadline for, I think, the warrant articles and the funding. So that's prominently will be in there, so I think whenever people start, that's gonna be right in front of you. That everyone's gonna know those timelines, hopefully.
I mean,
Bob will know
I
them
will
and-
tell you that from prior experience, the death knell for articles is getting to town meeting and having somebody get up and raise questions about it. So if you can get to town meeting, and frankly, there's no discussion about the article, because all that discussion has taken place either at board and committee meetings or Board of Selectmen meetings and Finance Committee when they review the articles. If all that discussion takes place then, and you get to town meeting and they're just gonna vote on it, that's how things get passed.
Right, and
As
that's-
soon as somebody gets up and talks about, well, wait a minute, what about this or what about that? And you're trying to answer those kind of questions on town meeting floor, that's generally when articles don't pass.
Right, so the idea is to get as much input as possible from
Ahead
a
of
number of
time.
different
Right.
committees.
Ahead of time.
Each committee can have their own public input. We'll follow along,
Yep.
and then, we don't know what we don't know, what
Right.
hasn't popped up yet. So, okay, so we've kind of finalized the draft. We've sort of talked about an accompanying letter, which will be, I don't know how long or short, but it's got to have a lot of specific stuff in it to really, I think, transmit a lot of information along. Other questions?
I think Judy will probably do a fine job on the letter, you know.
Well, whatever I put together, I'll share with Bob and you all, and
Right, but I think my
Before we
goal,
send it out.
can we get this out before our next meeting?
yes.
Okay, good, because another 2 weeks doesn't.
Yeah, no, definitely before the next meeting.
Bob, I have a theoretical question. It just popped into my
I don't
head.
answer those, I get in trouble when I answer those.
Has it ever happened, or can it happen, that at town meeting, an article, or I guess you'd call it a warrant, that came before,
An article.
starts getting beat up, and it's revised on the spot, and then it settles the bone of the...
It can happen,
It can happen?
it can happen, yeah,
Okay, so it's theoretically possible?
theoretically possible.
Okay. Not that you want to do
Okay,
that,
okay.
but, okay.
Okay, do we have input from the public, comments from the public?
First one is of someone that just guessed. I don't know who that is. She's had their hand up for a long time, so.
Yes, it's Elaine Gibbs, thank
Oh,
you.
Hi, Elaine.
Wouldn't take my initials. I would just caution you, I have two comments. One is on the actual occupancy and the other is on the parking. I'm a full-time resident and I'm surrounded by rental properties. What happens, pragmatically, is someone will rent a house, but they're going for 10, 15,000 if you've got a nice house. But what they do is, 4 couples show up. And, they're adult couples, they may be related, they may not be related, and they split the rent. So now you have 8 adults. And if you say children under 5, that means those 4 couples could have 12 kids under 5 in the house. They're each bringing their children. It has happened. I think you have to say the number of people, bodies per bedroom, limited to 2. And I wouldn't start with the +1 or the +2 because that's going to get violated. They're going to bring them anyway. In terms of parking, when you say what can fit on the property, the rental that was next door to me, it was 4-car driveway comfortably. There would be 12 cars in that, and they would jockey every time somebody wanted to get out. 12 cars. And then they would have visitors come over. And it's not how many will fit. I think you have to say the cars are based on the occupancy. And that's it. Because again, when you have 4 couples, they each bring a car, that's 8 right there. The husband and wife drive separately and the wife brings the kids. And suddenly you're back up to the situation where most of the rentals, that's how it operates. There are 8 adults in the house and, 6, 8, 10 kids. And they're sleeping on sofas and they're sleeping on the floors and they're bunking out. So I would hope you would restrict the parking and you would start off most conservatively that, 2 per bedroom, period. And no age limit. And I think the 110 gallons, that may be true of full-time residents. But again, I can tell you, when you have that many people in a house, they are way over that. They are on vacation. They are taking 2, 3 showers a day. The kids are out under the hose and the sprinklers and all that kind of stuff. They're using a lot of water. So I would hope that you do this more restrictively, and then if people want you to loosen up. But if you go in there and say, kids under 5, you're going to have a lot of kids in those houses, and that means more cars, and that means more parking problems. And my only question is, I had asked the select board, we have the ability to get the list of the rental properties from the state. They have the list. Anybody who uses a rental agency the agencies have to complete a 1099. So we already know who those 700 to 1,000 properties are. And that's a lot of properties. A lot of these homes, the owners they're non-residents, they're investment properties, they may come down a couple weeks, but they're rented out for the full season. So it does have a negative impact on our water usage, I think more dramatically than even our irrigation systems. A tremendous amount of water is used. And if that's your concern, I think that, by restricting the parking and occupancy, it will go a long way. And it affects everything about the town in terms of our infrastructure. And the wear and tear on it. So I think what you're doing is awesome, but I think you should be as restrictive as possible going forward if you want it to make an impact on our water situation and on just the environmental and infrastructure problems that 20 or 30 people in a house has on the town. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Didn't we finally say for the parking, 1 car per bedroom? Was that our?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so we came to the conclusion 1 car per bedroom for parking, which is pretty restrictive. And then the occupancy calculation, we can come back to that again, but is there someone else from the public that wants to have a comment?
Gloria?
Yes, thank you. It's Gloria Freeman. I first want to thank you for taking this on. You're doing a great job. And I also have a question, which is, should properties with cesspools be rented? I understand that until a property transfers owners, cesspools are allowed. And right now, the properties can be rented. Could there be problems in a rental if the cesspool is overused? I think this is clearly in your jurisdiction and might be a good idea to at least require an inspection or prohibit rentals, short-term rentals. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we can talk about that. I think if we, to say that homes with cesspools can't be rental, that's a big change in the whole market that I think we're stepping out into something that will be more than simple, basic, a beginning of a short-term rental bylaw. That's what I'd say right off the bat. But let anyone else have public input? Okay, then open up for discussion based on the public input. Anyone on the board? It was brought back we said 2 per bedroom plus 2 people under 5, which is, how do you judge how old they are and all that? Or the more restrictive 2 per bedroom. Any rethinking of that, Dick?
Well, I think, my understanding was it was 2 per bedroom plus 2 under 5 per house.
Per house,
And
correct.
I think Elaine felt that we were saying 2
Yes.
additional
Per bedroom.
people under 5 per bedroom.
Right.
So the most you would, under what we had said, the most children that could stay in the house, in addition to the adults, would be a total of 2.
That's correct.
For the
That's my
whole
understanding.
house.
Yep.
So 2 per bedroom plus 2 additional occupants under 5 for the house.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I think that helps. And the parking helps. Anyone have a comment on the cesspool? I think you've got a whole class of people you'd be telling you can't rent, which I think that's
Yeah.
more than we want to do right now.
If the cesspool's working, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, people, if the cesspool gets overloaded, it's gonna fail, and then the owner of the house is gonna have to deal with it.
Among the
These are-
standards, we're gonna have an inspector go and do an inspection of all these, and there's gonna be a checklist
Right.
or a scope of the inspection. Will one of those include a properly working septic system?
Sure, I mean, that's part of
Or is that
any
gonna be
type of a
part of
rec-
the affidavit that they have to assert?
Yeah, I mean, we would
Renters.
have to work out an affidavit that could include that. We could ask that they, provide us with an inspection. I mean, those are things that we can talk about when we're, after we get this through, then it's almost like working on the affidavit and coming up with guidelines for moving forward.
You haven't seen an increased pattern of failing cesspools relating to rental properties
No.
so far?
No,
Okay.
I haven't seen anything like that.
Okay. All right, other discussion about the short-term rental? So we have the bylaw, we have the letter that Judy will make up. We're going to try and get that out without going to another Board of Health meeting, so it'll come out sometime later this week, hopefully. And we will continue it as an agenda item and a discussion. So I think we've finished that one for the evening. Okay, I checked. Number 3 is gone. All right. Okay, so move on to the next one. Update discussion, John McGrath. And I'm not sure there's a whole lot new here. We're waiting for the Mass Department of Environmental Pollution to come back and inspect again at the end of the month, and then to see where that goes. And we've decided that we have to let them sort of carry through with what they're going to do before we jump in and do something else. The one thing I did ask was, when are the police going to begin to enforce the no parking? Do we know? I think Mr. Andy Goddard had said what they usually do is complete the signage, notify the neighbors, and then they begin policing the
I
parking.
think they did all that.
Right,
Yeah.
I checked with Tom Temple last week. They were going to be in the process of putting up the rest of the signage or extending it further down the street as discussed with the Board of Selectmen. And there seemed to be a little uncertainty over the notification to abutters. But I indicated based on what I knew as to who was responsible for dealing with that. So
Okay.
hopefully that's in the works.
So are they going to extend the no parking signs from the property all the way down to that
Yeah, they were
road?
supposed to extend it all the way down to that first street on the right-hand side
Right,
there.
oh, they are
Yeah,
gonna do that, okay.
whole side was supposed to be,
All right, I drove by a couple days ago, and I, just in a quick look, I didn't see any apparent removal, any
No,
change, really?
no, I drove by too. There's nothing.
There may be some more
If anything,
stuff.
he just pushed it up to the other end. And I was wondering when they had mentioned that he had a fall or things like this, do we have any documentation from a doctor or anything that he did have an injury or anything like this?
Oh,
we don't, because he's been dealing, as Judy alluded to, DEP has now stepped in, and they're taking the lead.
Right. So what
under
will
their
they do
authority.
as far as cleanup?
DEP can order a cleanup, they can fine him, they can do, they have pretty much the same things to be able to do that you have. You know, so it's just, at this point, we're just waiting, you know, DEP's got another inspection scheduled, I believe, for the 29th of this month.
there is.
Because they'd given him basically 30 days, you know, from the
Right.
last time they were here. Based on some emails, you know, regarding his injury that was indicated to the satisfaction of DEP
Okay.
by some other people that he's been working with to try to
So
undertake a
is
cleanup.
DEP aware of his neglect of paying fines? That he, basically, they're aware of that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, they have a pretty good sense of who they're dealing with.
okay.
Yeah, I think he's aware that this process started back in 2016 and 17, so it's been ongoing. But he himself is having his first dealings with the owner,
Yep.
and so he's going to learn himself and to make his own decisions and go through his process, and we just have to let that go, I think.
Okay.
Has he been assessed fines in the past?
I don't know.
Not by us.
No?
But the DEP could assess fines, and they could even assess a daily fine.
They will.
And
They could say, we're gonna fine you $200 a day for every day until this is done, and that adds up fast, and they put a lien on his house.
Well, and DEP can fine at much higher amounts than we can under state statutes, so.
Would they be in charge of the cleanup, or would that come back to us again?
DEP could undertake the cleanup and be in charge, so that's why I say at this point,
Okay.
they have kind of taken over,
Uh-huh.
for want of a better term. I mean, we're just kind of monitoring what they do and to see how it goes, and, you know,
Okay.
but
And-
they have much broader authority under state statutes. Just like in the Wetlands Protection Act, I mean, we can cite people like $300 a day under the Wetlands Protection Act. DEP can cite up to $25,000 a day, so they have much broader ability to get people's attention, if you will.
But the significant thing is that the Mass DEP person, he declared it an illegal dump
Transfer station.
Exactly.
site. That's something under their provisions. So that triggers something they're going to do. So he made a commitment, he made a statement.
Right.
And so he's made a judgment, so that's a step forward.
I drove by the property today, as I'm sure many of us have in the past, and there was a big tree pruning job being done. I don't know whether that was on town property or his property, but he was there today, John McGrath. I saw him walking around. He looked perfectly.
Right. I mean, that's what I've heard, yeah.
I mean, he wasn't walking with a cane or, you know, with a wheelchair or anything. So he's able-bodied, it would seem, at this point.
Thank you.
There was a police detail with that also.
Yeah, but whose pruning were they doing for
I
the,
don't know.
right? there
I
was-
think one thing, John, there's the apron for his driveway, and then I think his old driveway then paralleled right behind the guardrail for, you know, like 50 or 100 feet, and then it went into the interior of the property. So if you were actually going to drive in there, you would have, you know, the driveway goes right behind the guardrail. right in
Okay.
that area between the guardrail and where all the
Okay.
junk is. So that he may have been preparing
It
that, I don't
actually
know.
goes down the hill, where it starts, it goes down the hill towards the house, because it's a steep drop-off right
It is, yeah.
behind
Once
the
he
gu-
gets-
right behind the guardrail, it's a steep drop-off.
Right, I think there's a relatively flat, narrow area, and then, because I think the driveway went right behind the guardrail, went up the property towards 137, and then it went down the hill. I don't know. Anyway,
Who knows?
The tree
So-
I-
service that was there, it was, I think, beyond his property.
Okay.
beyond it. Okay.
The tree service was
Was
beyond
past, okay.
his property.
Yeah, the tree service clearing is probably related to Eversource, because that's where the new water treatment plant is going, way down behind
Okay.
the
Yeah.
Nickerson stump dump, and they have to upgrade the electrical service, so I suspect that may be what it's related to.
Carol?
I just have another quick question, not about John McGrath, but about where the fishermen are storing their property. What's happening with the debris that was already there? Is that being cleaned
The
up?
fisherman's storage area
Right,
at the airport?
yes.
Okay. Not on your agenda, but it's under water quality.
you.
We have 3 fishermen who had indicated to the town that they needed a temporary storage area.
Right.
We've identified 3 areas at the wastewater treatment plant that can accommodate them. I met with 2 of them on site last week. 2 of them started to remove their material Thursday and Friday out of the site over behind the airport to the wastewater treatment plant site. We are ready to file with DEP for the permanent relocation of the site, which is going to be off Middle Road. We were just waiting for the DPW director's signature on the documents that have to go to DEP. Even though we're not affecting the existing landfill cap, we're outside of that, it's on the same large piece of property. So it still needs to go through DEP permitting. So it took DEP a while to figure out exactly which permit they wanted us to file for. That has been resolved, and so that is currently underway. We have the plan from GHD, which if I can find it here quickly, I can show you, because I did an update on this topic last week to the Board of Selectmen. Let me share my screen here real quick. So this is the new fisherman's storage area that hopefully we will be going out to bid for in the next couple of weeks. This is, I said, this is Middle Road right here. The wastewater treatment plant is down here in kind of the lower right portion of the screen. And the cap landfill is kind of up here in the upper right portion of the screen. So this is going to be in an area outside the fence to both of those facilities. This will be fenced in new, and then this area will be cleared and leveled off to basically serve as the fisherman's storage area.
Thank you for
The-
that, but I'm wondering about the debris that was there aside from the
Yeah,
fishermen.
once they have moved once the 3 fishermen have relocated their material, then the area will be cleaned up. We're in discussions right now at town staff level as to who's going to have the lead. A lot of it is just metal debris and wood debris. And in the past, what we've done is DPW has brought over a couple of large containers, we throw it in there, and then they take it off and recycle it. So we're anticipating the same kind of thing. We may bring in AmeriCorps just to provide some manpower to help out with that. But once we've got the 3 fishermen out of there that need to relocate their stuff, then we'll be able to come in and do the cleanup. So that's the current plan.
All right. Is there a timeline for that at all?
I don't know, because I don't know if the airport commission's gonna have the lead on that, or DPW is gonna have the lead. We're having a meeting this week to kind of hash through, okay, next steps.
And then after the cleanup, then the gate gets closed.
The gate is already closed. The
It
gate
is.
has been closed
Okay.
since September 7th was when the
Okay.
airport commission chair locked the gate.
Okay.
So now arrangements have to be made to get in there and get the stuff
Okay.
out.
And just one more question. Why do we have to wait till the fishermen have their gear out of there to clean that up?
So we know exactly what is being left behind versus what is being taken out and that they want to keep.
Okay. Thank you.
Have those three very large dredges been removed? The big gigantic metal dredges?
I'm not exactly sure which ones you're talking about, but there was a large amount of dredge-type structure apparatus
Right.
that were moved over to the wastewater treatment plant on Friday.
Oh,
So
okay,
they
so
may be-
these, because those things would never fit in a
Yeah,
dumpster.
they may
Yeah,
be the
that-
ones you're talking about. I
Oh.
They
assume
were big and
probably are.
heavy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they were.
yeah, I do have a picture, but it'd take me a minute to find it, but,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so that was sort of under other, but let's go back and pick up, and number 5 is update discussion Chatham water quality. that
I
Dr.
don't really
Duncanson.
have any further update for you this week. Everything, the engineering and the permitting just continues to move along.
And the big news from our last meeting was that the select board had the issue of this water bylaw potential. They asked the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee to handle that and to look into
The
it.
Water and
So
Sewer
that's-
Advisory Committee is going to be looking at a master plan for water, which would take into account new wells, increasing size and distributions, all those topics that we've been talking about.
Right.
They have that on their plate, as well as potentially updating the water conservation measures to deal with the private well issue. Or
Okay.
Private well topic, I shouldn't say, it's not necessarily.
All
an
right,
issue.
input from the public on that? No. Okay, we go on to 6, COVID update.
COVID is still here, as you can imagine, so just quickly, I will show you the figures that I always show you. Whoops, I always forget to share my screen first. So COVID is still here. Here's our weekly case count in Chatham. Whoops, not the most updated one. Where's my updated one? Oh, for Pete's sake. Sorry. Okay, well, let me start backwards. Here's hospitalizations through the 16th. Slight downturn in hospitalizations, not significant. We still have 16 cases at Cape Cod Hospital and 6 cases at Falmouth Hospital. And 57% of the hospitalizations in the Commonwealth are in individuals reportedly fully vaccinated. So I know that's always a
What
question
percentage?
that I get asked. So
57?
57% of the hospitalizations in Massachusetts are in individuals that are reported to be fully vaccinated.
Does that just mean 2 primary vaccines?
I
Right.
can't answer that
I mean,
for you. It
that's
says
definite-
fully
yeah, fully
vaccinated.
vaccinated.
I think for individuals that are eligible for booster shots, which is pretty much everybody, but they don't get that specific. It's just, and then just quickly, let's see, average daily incident rate has plateaued. Chatham remained at 16.2 for the last reporting period, the 4th highest on the Cape, again, for 2 weeks in a row now. Barnstable County is slightly lower at 14.8, and the statewide average is at 14.4. So we continue to be a little bit higher than the county average and also a little bit higher than the state average. Sorry, I hate it when it drops things into weird places. Here's our weekly case count. These are weekly confirmed cases in Chatham. And these are just cases reported to the state, so again, it doesn't include all the home test kits that people are doing. We had 7 cases for the last 2 weeks, last 2 weekly reporting periods. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. That's just a
Are
quick.
we in an endemic phase now?
The World Health Organization has not officially dropped the pandemic phase. I had seen something a week and a half ago that indicated they were getting close to doing that based on what's happening on a worldwide basis. But they have not done it yet officially. So according to the World Health Organization, we are still in a pandemic. But I think we all know that we're getting to endemic phase, very similar to the flu.
And at some point, we will just expect this to continue to percolate at a
I think
low
the
level?
expectation is we're probably already there. It's just in name only at this point.
Okay.
So basically, we're just like the flu every year. you know. There's some concern about a resurgence this winter if we get a new strain. There's also a concern that I think we've talked about before, that this may be a bad winter for flu, just because of what we're seeing in the southern hemisphere. You know, after 2 years of people wearing masks and social distancing, this year everything's kind of going back to normal. People don't have a lot of protection from the flu, so they're urging everybody to get a flu shot before Halloween. Because if not, we could have a fairly significant flu season, and we all know that, you know, again, it's the older folks and the very young, the infants, that have a tough time every year with the flu. So the guidance is get that flu shot.
Do we have our date yet for October?
Yes, I was just going to say, our flu clinic is going to be October 19th from 2 to 4. I have not opened registration yet. It will be a call-in registration with Cape Cod Healthcare. And also, we just confirmed that we're going to also include COVID boosters, so you can get both at that point. So if you want a COVID booster, you definitely need to, as part of with your flu shot, you need to call and register, pre-register. So I will be putting that out probably the beginning of next week with the.
And we will
registration.
register through the Cape Cod Healthcare?
Yes.
Okay.
It's going to be a drive-through clinic on October 19th from 2 to 4 at the DPW, same as last year.
Okay.
So, and it will, as I said, it will include, if you want, the COVID booster as well.
It'll be 2 shots.
Two
Flu shot, COVID shot.
two
not-
separate shots.
Not combined
They'll
into
do
one
one a
shot.
Will they give it the same time from both sides of the car?
They may. They may.
One in each arm.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments or? Okay, any other comments or input from the public out there?
Well, just one final thing on COVID. We did today receive about 15 more cases of COVID and antigen home test kits. So if you or any members of the public need those, we have them. They are still available. We're still giving out a fair number every day.
Good.
So we
All
have
right,
them.
good. Any other business? All righty, then maybe we can just go over the minutes from our September 12th, last week's meeting. Anybody have any comment, any corrections or additions to the meetings from last week? Can I get a motion to approve them?
So move.
Second?
Second.
And then we just take a vote. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Okay, the minutes are approved, and then we can go ahead and close the meeting. Anyone like to make a motion to close the meeting? Second? Second. And then a voice vote. All in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.